Okay, we are live. This is February 15th, 2026, Infinite Plane Sunday. And the title kind of explains where we're going today. Is Epstein Q? Fan fiction, Alex Jones's bizarre N-word baby abuse rants, and mass psychosis. So I consider what we do to be a form of anthropology. We're alien anthropologists because our perspective is outside of their closed system, the duopoly, mainstream alternative. And I've pretty much arrived at the conclusion that this whole Epstein thing, this obsession that we're seeing, is engineered, government created counterculture. I think it's 100% inorganic, astroturfed. And I think it's actually designed to elicit the responses that it's getting. And we're seeing it in real time. Like, this is not accidental. This is not organic. And these people are basically sheep. And I'm interacting with them as an outsider, just, bringing things to their attention or expressing my opinions on the matter. And I'm immediately being called a baby killer or a adrenochrome junkie. I'm a vampire now, whatever they say. And in fact, one of them invited me to Canada to get beat up in the snow. I mean, it does get hot here. I could see going up there. But my point of it is they're very emotional. And I'm thinking that this is exactly like the original QAnon, where suddenly all the people in Conspiracyville were like, where's your AIDS ribbon? It's like that Seinfeld episode where Kramer doesn't want to wear the AIDS ribbon. And they're like, what's the matter? Aren't you against AIDS? And he's like, I'm marching. I'm against AIDS, but I don't want to wear the ribbon because he's a nonconformist. So what do? They beat the crap out of him. So I literally have the AIDS ribbon brigade threatening to beat me up in the snow because I don't want to join their new Q cult. And that's what this is. This is QAnon all over again. We've been here before. All right, I see a couple of people in chat. Hopefully we have sound. It's always strange how there's these random gremlins in the system. Okay, let's see here. Do we have sound? I'm going to start recording this on a separate mic on a laptop on the presumption that the sound's not going to work a percentage of the time. We have to account for this. Joined by Ollie Goering, thank you. Reality Witness says hi, Tim. And Smarty Pants is here making emoji hand signs. Okay, sound is good. Excellent. So anyway, we're going to go through my tweets. But also, when I say is Epstein Q, well, there's every indication if you believe the stuff. And I'm operating from their point of view. They believe the emails. Therefore, they need to consider that the source of this entire drama is connected directly to him. So I'm saying that this is manufactured mythology. No different than the UFO stuff. The invasion scenario, abductions, secret government projects, Roswell, all that crap is manufactured mythology. This is admitted. The Pentagon admitted it last year. Nobody cared. But even before that, there's a very good documentary you can find, Mirage Men, about how somebody close to where I live by this Kirtland Air Force Base, was observing a ton of aircraft that, are classified. And he was writing about it online in his conspiracy websites. Well, they sent special agents into his life. They became his friend, and they fed him misinformation about alien abductions, underground military bases, aliens from Venus coming here to take our water because climate change took theirs. And people ran with it. And this guy had conferences. And turns out they were using the conferences as honeypots to get every single person who showed up at these hotel conferences to put their names down as a list of these people have seen this classified material. So if you look at the classified material as like a mind virus they're tracking down, and they got to get to the carriers, it's an operation. They deceived this guy for many years, fed him a bunch of nonsense, and then this worked its way into popular culture. I mean, look, X-Files. All these X-Files shows about aliens or any of the popular conspiracy theories are government manufactured. That's why I'm saying there's the subset of media consumers, the conspiracy subculture. Yeah, that's government created counterculture. So why would we think the Epstein thing is any different? We're talking operations that run over many decades. Just as the JFK conspiracy theories really started, I think, the beginning of tracking down the conspiracy theorists, aka the would-be free thinkers, and lock them down into a controlled paradigm. This is a formulaic operation, and they're doing the same thing with Charlie Kirk and putting Candace Owens on blast. They're essentially honeypotting people who don't believe the mainstream and channeling them somewhere where they won't be destructive to the overall media infrastructure. So people still trust the news as long as it brands itself as I'm against the establishment news. And as I've been saying, anti-establishment media is actually a subset of the establishment. And this became very clear. The reason I brought up Alex Jones is Alex Jones goes on to a popular influencer on Twitter. He goes live and he's drinking booze. And he goes in there and he starts dropping N-words, like hard R. Like, I don't know what the hell. I mean, I guess he's either acting like he's drunk and he's using the bottle of whatever he was drinking to give himself some kind of excuse. I'm not really sure. But then he started talking about how because of Trump, and Trump was yelling all kinds of expletives, they had to release the other 3 million of the Epstein emails or the pages of documents. Well, guess what? It didn't happen. He lied because they never released them. And he was talking about what was released and how bad it was. And he gave these really detailed descriptions of how the elite specifically abuse babies. And we're not just talking about cannibalism. He goes into some sick territory. So I'm saying, okay, that's weird and bad. And it's not substantiated by any facts. But this isn't the first time it happened. He made the exact same claims when the Hunter Biden laptop was being hyped up right before the 2020 election. And he had someone coming on the show. He was speaking Chinese and they had subtitles talking about how the laptop was full of videos that compromise the president because his son is some kind of serial killer, satanic vampire pedovore. Well, it turns out none of that was true. Just a bunch of bad photos with a guy. They look fake to me. Honestly, they look fake. But anyway, even if they're real, it contains nothing of the sort, just a lot of drug abuse. So these lies never get, there's no apologies. There's no fact checking internally. They just run with it. And he says, everybody's talking about beef jerky. Yeah, and I've heard from a number of people that you do, in fact, refrigerate or freeze, rather, beef jerky. But the idea that you put it in the freezer, but I mean, look, the way they talk is really strange. Like, you walk the beef jerky into the dungeon. Not that exactly, but no, they definitely have, look, it's not a nothing. Like, there is a there. The question is it real or is it fake? What I'm suggesting here is that this is psychological warfare. It's an invented mythology. There's no aliens probing people in space or mutilating cows. And I'm not saying that there aren't evil people doing horrible things or whatever, but this thing I'm saying is a similar constructed mythology. And why would they do it? Well, there's a few reasons. Part of it is, who does this ultimately blame? We're looking at QAnon all over again. What was QAnon? QAnon is a new iteration of blood libel. In other words, Jewish world domination. In this case, through the influence of an agent working for the Mossad. Although right now it's come back in this new form, and now it's pointed at Trump, not Biden. And instead of pointing at the Mossad, they're pointing at the KGB. So now it's a Russian thing. So they've repurposed this psyop because people have West world syndrome. They're stuck in the present news cycle, and they're not even processing that we've been through this before. Same rabbit trails, no new documents. And Jones is out there blatantly lying, and people are like, whoa, Alex Jones is controlled opposition. He's lying. It's like, if you're just now noticing that, you have no discernment. He betrayed you on 9/11, on Sandy Hook, on January 6th. At no point was he ever not a pawn of the establishment. It wasn't like he converted at some point. No, he's always been on script. So what he's doing right now is just, to me, it's like not unexpected. He's never been held accountable for making these extreme claims. And I'm wondering, though, if maybe the booze was performative and he wasn't really drunk. I'm really leaning towards that because the guy's an actor. A lot of people say that's not the Alex Jones that, I don't know. The micro expressions line up, but I can't rule it out. I talked about this with someone earlier. I was like, the proposition that some of these people are pure CGI constructs is unnecessarily complicated. Although we do live in the movie Sim 1 or Simone with Al Pacino, where it is entirely possible to construct a complete, digital clones. But what I'm saying is that when it comes I don't think we should jump to that conclusion. We kind of have to be careful. We have to be discerning about calling things real and fake. So is it fakeable? Could Alex Jones have been replaced? Well, yeah. And one of the other points I made was, if you have a character who's going to be in a series of psyops over 20 or 30 years, you have to account for the fact that people die. And if they have a very important role, you're probably going to have some means of replicating that person. And you've seen the synthetic masks. And this was all declassified in 2015. Is that Jonah Mendez, CIA director of disguise for 27 years. So the masks, the technology that made them foolproof, were in use 40 years before they started talking about it. And they only started talking about it when they started bringing in the digital versions. It's like, oh, look, they're going to start deep faking us. No, we are already deep faked. So Sim 1 is a 2002 film. Follows a director who creates a virtual actress to star in his films. And he tries to keep her non-existence a secret as she becomes more famous. So it's kind of interesting how this is exactly what we're living in right now. Like, this has become achievable. It's already being done. I'm sure it's being done. I'm 100% sure that people are being, catfished, and they're falling in love with and making wedding plans with AI avatars, skins. But we've already been deep faked. Nothing's new about that. We live in fictive level 1, to use a Black Mirror reference. I used to call this planet Netflix. And there's a Netflix episode, season 6, episode 1, Joan is Awful, about this really awful boss who essentially notices that when she's watching Netflix, she's seeing her life. Only it's being played by Salma Hayek. Well, it turns out it's not Salma Hayek. Hayek licensed her image to Netflix. So it's a digital clone of Salma Hayek, but her entire script throughout the show is quite literally based on the surveillance of the primary actress. And at the end, she finds out that they live in fictive level 1. I mean, what that meant was she was a simulation. But what I'm saying, we live in fictive level 1 to the extent that they have merged entertainment and fake events with reality. So when I say we live on planet Netflix, it's literally true. All right, joined by Do You Think, Dinah Southard, Ali Goering, Jenna Lovecraft Reeves, Capture the Loops. The shadow of the digital dark age grows darker still. Oh, it's opaque. It's the black monolith. Dr. Bass Ackworth says, I remember hearing some story about someone who was working with these higher ups and they saw a mask that had some crazy high-tech stuff inside of it. I think I know which one you're talking about. I think he was talking about reptilians, perhaps, and how they mask it. I don't know if that's the same story. But what I'm pointing out here is that as soon as they started talking about the ability to create digital deepfakes that are convincing, people started noticing, oh, we could be put into a world that's been completely distorted by lies we can't see through. And I'm like, that's a major deflection or misdirection from the fact that they have been doing that for 40 plus years. So there are people that we've seen on the world stage who may not actually exist. I mean, that, like, quite literally might just be a series of actors in masks. So my point of it is that's achievable. It's done. It's not an extraordinary claim. If you don't know about it, it's because it was kept out of the public purview, but it's real. Mission Impossible stuff. That said, yeah, Jones could have been replaceable, The only part that I find hard to see about that scenario is that there are more likely scenarios that would explain the weight loss and probably even the baldness and the musculature. I mean, I think he's just on a bunch of different things. But I think his personality would be hard to fake by a human actor. But I think AI could do it pretty well because it has how many years of content to throw into that agent's knowledge base. Although I do see people who do convincing impersonations or caricatures, but and the way his brain works is kind of unique. And I'm not even asserting that he started off as a comedian, but I think he's a comedian. He's a Poe, a parody of extremism. And he's always been doing J-Pill light. The red pill conspiracy theory content, and I'm talking about pretty much all the popular conspiracy theories from, chemtrails, the Bill Gates vax stuff, false flags, 9/11 trutherism, all of that stuff ultimately points to Israel. They just don't flaunt it out front. So he'll say George Soros, globalists, but he'll never directly call it out. And he gets a lot of flack for that. And it's not that he's not supporting that whole notion or that worldview on the far right where it's infused with conspiracies. But I think his job is to make it more accessible and more palatable so he can get mainstream coverage. And then, of course, bridge people on over to the J-Pill side. I mean, that's what Candace Owens is doing right now. By the way, there was a ton of stuff we were referencing, predictive programming regarding blackouts. And I saw a lot of news stories about the blackouts in Iran. I wanted to look deeper into those. And if you're in the Discord server, I shared a blog post because we've been talking about the symbolism of Bad Bunny. And a couple of things, I have a couple of things about that. One of them is that I did find another Bad Bunny reference it was from 2024. It was this show called Oswald about this like evil bunny. It's a repurposing of an old cartoon, apparently. But anyway, I'm looking at that as, oh, that's another Bad Bunny reference. And I went into the article because it's about the name Oswald starting in 2022 was just showing up in the context of predicting a bloody head wound on Trump. So interestingly, at the end of the article, I referenced this growing body of content predicting that there would be some event with Trump. And it did come true, in fact, 4 months later. And there's some specificity there. Like it was foreshadowed with Robert Crimo, who had the 47 tattooed on the right side of his head. Not to go too deep down a tangent, but what I'm pointing out here is that we've already established that we've been reading the entertainment to get a gauge on what's to come. And we were predicting with some specificity various elements of the incoming PSYOP, fake shooting. In fact, Laura Loomer was making some ass-kissy tweet to Erica Kirk. I mean, it's all theater. They're all actresses. About how she's brave and so many bad conspiracy theorists. And I replied to that one. And I said, Charlie Kirk's alive. Just a PSYOP actor. And Donald Trump used theatrical blood. And I've been getting a lot of flack for that one as well. Because a lot of the people who are mainstream news consumers, of course, are 100% on board with the fake events. They think it's all real. The conspiracy theorists, a lot of them, if they're QAnon leaning, they still think Trump's on their side. So they make up some bizarre story about why he had to do it. I hear similar things about Charlie Kirk. Like he had to hide from Israel, so he faked his death because he knew they were going to try to kill him. So he had to fake it first. I mean, that's really convoluted. And I really think that we ought to stray away from convoluted conspiracy theories if they ask more questions than they answer. I mean, a lot of conspiracy theories aren't even rightly described as theories. They're just baseless claims. What's up, Scotty Smith? Linda Cutter said, could this AI age be the Dark Winter? Interesting question. In fact, I have an outline for the first video conspiracy vetter that I'm working on. And I think this channel will probably do well, this conspiracy vetter thing. we used to put a lot of effort into things like South Park. And so I'm thinking I'm probably going to include elements of that. But my point of it is I'm writing out in advance what these videos are going to be on. And I do want to address the attitudes towards AI coming specifically from the right. The idea here that AI is demonic or somehow going to be the vehicle for alien invasions, and how this is consistent throughout. And it ties in with Tucker Carlson, who the guy who survived the demon attack, who was previously describing aliens as secretly being demons. There's a reason why truthers believe this stuff. And I think it needs to be addressed. I think they have a sense of credibility because nobody's challenging it. They get a pass on it. It's like, well, define demon, because they're mixing superstition, religious superstitious ideas and concepts with real news. And what we're really describing here overall on this channel is how they've managed to infuse our real life timeline with this fictive level 1, a series of fake events, myths, hyperstitions that have put the collective into hyper reality. Fake dominates real. They're in this collective Truman Show. Dr. Bass Ackworth says, anyone know if it's true that Ozempic is a synthetic version of snake venom? They said the same thing about the shot. I would ask Perplexity or ask Grok. People hate it when I ask Grok. They post a meme of a caveman talking to a rock. Rock, is this true? It's not like I'm outsourcing my brain. You see, the thing they miss is that AI is not the source. It's a source for sources and a summarizer of those sources. Same with Wikipedia. People say, oh, you can't trust Wikipedia. Well, that's not what you're doing. You can look at it as an aggregator of sources. And that's what I'm about here, sources. Which is why I'm so sick of the content harvesters who are engaged in this marketplace where it really is about getting attention, engagement bait, rage bait. And I would say that all of these Twitter influencers who spam stuff about Epstein are exploiting the victims because they're monetizing their content. And a lot of them are doing so knowing that they're wrong because they're getting fact checked, but they leave those comments up. They leave those threads up. Again, there's no accountability for liars on the world stage. Swirling Spy says that comparing videos of Ghislaine Maxwell's facial features from older photos to her video appearance on the House Oversight Committee on February 9th, it's not the same person. Yeah, I've seen that claim too. I need to look deeper into it because it could be a focal length thing. You've got to look at the cameras that they're using. Because I got a photo for my driver's license and it's, you know, they're terrible, but it's the camera. I don't think the camera's objective there is to be aesthetic. I think it's just to document the surface area of your skull. There were these rumors that Jamie Foxx was cloned. And it's like, well, no, if you have your face pressed up against your phone, you're going to have distorted facial features. And so that's something to be watchful for. So at this point, the Ghislaine Maxwell still alive, and that's a body double deep fake. Think about this. If all your, I mean, if they have this advanced technology, why would they goof it up like that? Okay, going through your comments. Big Enchilada says the blackouts are a metaphor for something else, perhaps. Yeah, I concur with that. In fact, I don't think they can afford to do literal blackouts because we might touch grass. Millions of people, or depending on the scale, imagine billions of people unplugging. I don't know if they would maintain the leverage they have, the captive audience. But I think it's more likely a metaphor for a pandemic lockdown on the internet to stop the free flow of mind viruses until everybody gets an ID and facial scanning to protect the public from asymptomatic mind virus super spreaders, conspiracy theorists. And you know what ties into this? Marina Abramovich, the spirit cooker, says she can't walk down the street now because of Alex Jones and conspiracy theories. And I'm looking at the comments on Twitter, and all these patriot people with crosses and flags, they're like, good, burn the witch. Like, what? This is 2026, and we've got mobs who would gladly bring back burning witches at the stake. Or, I mean, I guess there's some parts in the world where you could probably stone people still, but that's where they're at mentally. So I'm like, hey, you guys, you're probably following psyop theater, and they're like, oh, you're one of them. You're a pizza gator. You and your grape soda and jerky. Dr. Vass Ackworth says Charlie Kirk being alive would still answer all the bizarre behaviors surrounding that BS, like known crisis actors playing a central role. Oh, there's a lot there. In fact, I'm working on an ebook that I'm going to release along with my Squib video. I decided I'm just going to move forward with the project now, even though I won't be able to hire Squib Tech until later this month. But I'm going to do the rest of it. I'm going to use the ebook as a basis for it. But basically, I think you could make the case that Charlie Kirk is not only really the Charlie Kirk the public saw, but that he went along with a role that was handed to him when he was 18, probably, but a script that was written while he was still a toddler, before they had even chosen who was going to be the Charlie Kirk. That this new JFK psyop was already scheduled 30 years ago. And that nobody died. The shooters, the whole thing, it's all theater. And Erica Kirk is a great example of a world stage character and actress. She's playing a role with a heel. In wrestling, the bad guy, she's a heel. She's a villain, a villainess, a Jezebel. And just going through the predictive programming for Erica Kirk, including the concurrent programming in The Tempest, about the widow who takes over the husband's organization after he's shot in the neck and how she's really behind it. If you look back, there's all these references: Tempest, Storm, the Storm, Jezebel. What do you think that is? Well, it implies that her character is a Jezebel. And that's how she's being looked at right now as they bring out more and more about her past. Now there's trending rumors about her grooming a 15-year-old girl, and she's constantly making bizarre references to filleted fish and posing oddly for photos. I don't care to go deeper into that, but she's exhibited a character that didn't exist before she became popular, when she first came out as the grieving widow. But it's like this dropping of the facade is intentional. This is a reveal. This is her character arc. And all the people thinking she's real think she killed Charlie. Yeah, that's what they want you to think. As long as you think Charlie's dead, it doesn't matter if you think Erica did it, Netanyahu did it, or Nick Fuentes did it. I mean, they were pointing, or Antifa, Tyler Robinson. There's even videos that purport to show Erica Kirk hanging out with Tyler Robinson. And it's kind of weird that on that video, My Kind of Crazy by Emerson Drive, where she zip lines past a 9/10, an obvious reference to the shooting date. And in the comments on 9/10/20, I think it was 2012, 13 years before, on September 10th, she says, "Thank you, Tyler. It was a great shoot," referring to the video. But Tyler, shoot, 9/10, 9/10. And some people are noticing the predictive programming and all this stuff. And there's people who've put up videos talking about how Charlie Kirk's alive. And they're just poisoning the well and drawing attention away from the fakeability of it, the squibs. Because once you can understand how it's done and that it's plausible, there are follow-up questions that they can't afford for you to ask. There are questions that will lead you off the world stage if you follow the answers. Starting with, if true, then what? Who was involved? Who's in the know? And that circle of people includes Erica Kirk, Candace Owens, presumably a lot of people that you can just strip away plausible deniability, the people directly involved in handling his body. The same production company that did the Trump ear wound special. I'm still surprised. I mean, they should have consulted me. I'm surprised they didn't tack on Flat Earther onto that shooter. They made him a furry. Posthumously, he's been awarded furry status. The lone wolf shooter is now the lone furry. I don't know what that means, but there's something to it. What's with these lone furry shooters? But they could have called him a flat earther and said, yeah, he would have shot Trump had he accounted for the Coriolis effect, but flat earthers don't account for the rotation of the earth. And the earth actually rotated the president in the podium a little bit to the side and the bullet missed. So the same guy who photographed George Bush on 9/11 with the Secret Service whispering into his ear could photograph the literal bullet whizzing by Trump's head. What a shot. What a photograph. People live in a movie, Fictive Level 1, Planet Netflix, with a whole lot of superimposed fictional universes that we always talk about here. A Newful says, think about the children in all caps, followed by laughing emojis. So that's where I'm at with it, though. Don't you want to save the children? Don't you want to wear an AIDS ribbon? It's like, yeah, I'm not against children being killed by satanic cabals, but I'm not joining your cause. You can't fall for their peer pressure or their ad hominem attacks, their verbal abuse. They're just like Antifa. The far-right conspiracy theorists get radicalized around stuff like this, and they're just basically clones of the left. You look at these crazy people in the streets, and they've all stopped. I think they stopped that whole psyop. Does anybody remember what was her name? Renee what? Started with a G, I think. It's funny how everybody just moves on to the next shiny object. Epstein Part 2 comes along, QAnon 2, and now nobody's talking about Minneapolis. Oh, by the way, so I mentioned the Bad Bunny thing because I saw a picture of the tattoo people were sharing. So in the middle of his torso, he's got a tattoo of this two-headed being, one crowned by the sun or haloed with the sun, the other one crowned by a crescent moon. So the sun, moon, two-headed thing. I found an article, the occult, that describes the meaning of it. The rebis, R-E-B-I-S, or hermaphrodite, the consummated sacred marriage of the female and male energies. The polar energies have merged. So you recall during the halftime show they had a marriage ceremony, and I talked about how that's always part of it, the alchemical wedding. Well, this kind of reiterates that symbolism there was telling us that. The literal marriage, and then him in white with the Scarlet Woman, Lady Gaga, in her symbolic priestess role as the incarnate of their goddess Babylon. So this merging of Babylon and the beast, the hermaphrodite thing ties into Baphomet, that's what it is. But it's all symbolism, not at all a coincidence that the performer with this symbol performs in dresses, because what they're showing the public is that there's this duality being represented. It's all ritual, ceremony. So I've been thinking about a few things as far as, the reason why we need to systematize our skeptical takedowns of conspiracy theories that are most likely put there by plants. Because a lot of people are being misled. There's a lot of confusion agents, a lot of mudding of the waters. And I think we need to challenge the people in those muddy waters. I'm not trying to change it. I'm not trying to drain the alt media swamp or anything. We're not trying to reform it. We're observing what it is. And we need to aggregate those who have grown out of it, who aren't contented in their little manufactured cul-de-sacs. And that's what these things are. They're to stop you from leaving the world stage paradigm, the Truman Show. Appreciate the support. Reality Witness. Big Enchilada says, remember Bad Bunny was at the Super Bowl right before the lockdowns and Epstein was trending. I'm sorry, you have to reiterate what you said there. Bad Bunny was at the Super Bowl? Like a previous Super Bowl put another comment in there. Interesting, though. Like all these halftime shows tend to reflect the same set of symbols, and I would connect it largely with the pagan holiday position between the winter and summer solstices. And of course, the white and the red represent the god goddess, and the two-headed rebus has the sun and the moon for the god and goddess, man and woman. Okay, let's move on here. I'm thinking Bad Bunny might have been at the previous one, but I'll get more intel on that in a second. Let's go down my feed. Okay, Alex Jones says, and he goes on to a show called, it's being shared by someone else here. You know, there's a lot of people doing this thing with a clip from various live streams, and they get all the traffic. Like I see these things where some guy will post on his channel about how he posts a video where he goes into his house and his girlfriend's with another man, and then he throws her out, and it's this big drama, and then he posts about it, and he's like, guys, this is what just happened. He gets a lot of sympathy, brings out all the people who've had bad relationships, and they vent, and then somebody eventually finds out this isn't even you. So someone's taking somebody else's video of what happened to them and getting a ton of clicks out of it. Okay, Big Enchilada says Super Bowl 2020, Bad Bunny dressed in silver. Kids in cages. Okay. Probably a reference to the immigrant children, build the wall. Okay. And that's intriguing because I've been talking, what's the significance of Bad Bunny? And we were talking about the Oswald bunny, how it was showing up at the same time that they said quarterback, again, football connection, Brock Purdy looked like Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm like, what's with all these Oswald references? And then I remember Donnie Darko, which contains predictive programming for Donald Trump and Donald Trump versus Biden. I mean, it's all there. But in that one, the Bad Bunny, the skull-faced bunny, Frank, gets the head wound. So overlapping symbolism. In that case, it's kind of a reference to Alice in Wonderland. I still don't know the full significance of the bunny. But it's whatever it is. If you look at the context of the Super Bowl performance, you had the power poles, the blackout, and a song called Blackout. And then he does the Jesus crucifixion thing between two crosses, crucified between two others, between two thieves. And the deeper, I think, significance of this too is that the last time we had a blackout theme in the Super Bowl was Super Bowl 47 in 2013, where there was a blackout for 33 minutes. Although, after conspiracy theorists noticed, they started changing it to 32, sometimes 34. But on average, it's 33 minutes. It's after Beyonce played. Now, there's a great deal of significance to that blackout 2013 as it relates, I would say, to this particular blackout. There's a subtext there. A lot of programming messaging goes into the big sporting events. Capture the Loop says 2020 Super Bowl had Jennifer Lopez as the lady in red also. Once you see the pattern, I'll have to add that to my list. I've done what I call a metascript breakdown of the Red Witch archetype. Game of Thrones, Red Witch. But there's these various movies, Marvel superheroes movies and fantasy all over the place, a lot of sci-fi, where you have this archetype of this lady in red, which ties in to the Rebus thing, the goddess and the god. In the modern occult context, they refer to it as Babylon. Buzz Dean says the bunny represents the rabbit hole. Okay, interesting association. And also, yeah, that's right. Donnie Darko has an element, though, of time travel, which I think also relates to Alice in Wonderland. Lewis Carroll posited that if you were to dig a hole from one side of the earth to the other, it would take 42 seconds. Is that what he said? Let me go and pull that up. Strange character, though. And Alice in Wonderland is such a common feature of mind control stuff. Here it is. In Adventures in Wonderland, down the rabbit hole, Alice wonders, will she fall right through the earth? And there's a calculation, according to the gravity train theory, that a hole drilled through the center of the earth would take 42 minutes. Excuse me on the seconds. Like, that's too fast. 42 minutes. And Lewis Carroll's a mathematician. But anyway, my point of it is, the idea of falling through the earth taking 42 minutes, I think, is kind of another intriguing correlation here when you get into Elon Musk and all the 42 stuff. And what also gets really weird is Alice in Wonderland syndrome, which is an STD. Well, no, it's a symptom of an STD. And this STD is called the Epstein-Barr virus. And you got Epstein working for Donald Barr, son of A.G. Barr. Donald Barr wrote all the teenage trafficking novels, Space Relations, about teenage slaves on various planets. So it's like, what? There's some fascinating connections here. But yeah, that pair have an STD named after them. And the afflicted experience the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. And you tie in Alice in Wonderland with mind control, and it perfectly comports with the bigger story. Big Enchilada said, I wondered if the next lockdowns could be lockouts caused by a new species of black mold. Well, I think it's a couple of things. I think they could physically mandate lockdowns on the basis of fallout. That's prescribed. We could see that. Fallout could be, I mean, I think there's a few influencers, like Laura Loomer, for example, selling first aid kits in case we get hit by fallout. Like iodine, some other stuff. I don't know if she sells masks yet. But she's preparing to capitalize on the next big psyop. But fallout would follow the EMPs and the blackout. So you could have a physical blackout from EMP, electromagnetic pulse, lockdowns because of fallout. And then when they realize that the reason for this terrible attack is the internet, we need to censor things, then they can do the lockdown of the web on the account of disease X. And then you have to put on your mask to go back online. And by mask, we mean your face scan. And now and the constraints that it imposes upon your speech. William Morgan says, trying to intertwine the get theory model with mind virus concept, a new hybrid psyop psychopathy. Well, the mind virus concept, I think it does start with Selfish Gene, Richard Dawkins. I was reading one of his books, and there's a part of it that just disgusted me, and I put it down. Side note. But anyway, the guy's credited with that, but I think it was really extrapolated upon by Richard Brody. So the guy who programmed the first version of Word, Microsoft Word, had this concept in his book, Virus of the Mind, about the aspect of our belief systems that are passive. And I think there may be something to it. That there are some things that you accept that you never actually tested. And so you've accepted a belief rather than direct knowledge. And to that extent, a belief is something, is described in this book, that you passively pick up from your environment, and that these beliefs can be transmitted like viruses, and they can be traced. So you can contact trace a virus. Well, you can trace a shooter to the content he consumed. Like, oh, where did the shooter get radicalized? At this particular Discord server. And what messaging was he hearing from what influencers, what ideas? And that's kind of the precedent they've already established. And I think they use the 2020 scenario to acclimate us to the idea of the necessity for quarantining and lockdowns for the public good. And they've been using that model for explaining the mind virus concept, which was largely repopularized by Elon Musk, who said, I'm buying Twitter to get rid of the woke mind virus. Meanwhile, he introduces to mainstream the woke right mind viruses. 4chan. X is basically 4chan. And that's where we're seeing a lot of this Epstein faux activism, where these people who are saving the children are just furiously doom scrolling and rate. Some people, like I called one guy a crisis actor. I'll probably get to that tweet, but he's one of those car ragers. He pulls over and he was hyperventilating, bug-eyeing, breathing heavy, and then he started talking about how he saw the Skippy video and he can't unsee it, and you need to tell your friends that we need to be worried about Epstein. Well, when somebody hyperventilates before they start talking about something and fake crying, the hyperventilation helps in that process. He was probably remembering, a dead family dog or something to make him sad. And then he was bug-eyeing it because it dries the eyes out, makes it easy to tear. So if you see somebody bugging their eyes and then squinting and breathing heavy, yeah, that's method acting. So this method actor was ranting in his car about some non-existent recycled QAnon stuff. I called him out on it, and that's why the Canadian threatened to beat me up. Lord Laney says, I've noticed they brought back WW2 era Nazi report your neighbor if you see anything suspicious in relation to the Guthrie psyop. I've been on the lookout for her, to be honest. I saw a billboard here in town. Phone number to the FBI, reward money. I'm like, I could actually use that right now. Pay off an old student loan. So I'm looking. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Super Bowl featured that character coming out, that player dressed up like Hannibal Lecter. And then she's kidnapped on the 35th anniversary of the premiere of Silence of the Lambs. The daughter comes on TV and verbatim repeats the victim's family's plea for help, plea to the killer to be nice. The big enchilada says Dimension X was the abyss in Stranger Things. Okay, that's interesting because there's overlap between Stranger Things, Pizzagate, Satanic Panic, and the new iteration of mass shooter, the leftist, Reddit radicalized trans shooter thing. It's all connected to Stranger Things as predictive programming. And this pivot from right-wing, bowl-cut, neo-Nazi shooters shooting up public schools to now it's these leftist ones who are also Satanists. So you got the Satanic Panic element, and they're shooting up Christian schools. The Annunciation School shooter did have associations with the Order of Nine Angles, some satanic organization, Nazi, satanic. Meanwhile, the movie version, the movie Weapons, which contains copious predictive programming connections directly to the fake shooting, the villain is a redheaded witch. Redheaded shooter, redheaded witch. Jamarin May says, unfortunately, we are in a 2020 time loop. A lot of well-established remote viewers are seeing another pandemic towards the end of the year, physical disease, not a mind virus. Yeah, I call bullshit on remote viewers seeing the future. That's just, come on. I'm so done with doomers. I was done with it in, I think it's 2019, where someone said, oh, we're going to be raptured on September 23rd. They say this every year. I'm like, okay, well, I want to borrow your car on September 22nd. And I'll need keys to your house, just in case. I can go feed your pets, feed your goldfish. And they never take me up on it. No one has offered me all of their worldly possessions since they would be transcending. So do they really believe it? Apparently not. But no, I don't. Look, it's never going to get real. Sorry to disappoint you. It's never going to get real. It's always going to be fake. And the more you examine it, the more underwhelming the performances are. So if you want to enjoy the bread and circuses, it's better just to not look too deep. Don't overanalyze it. Big Enchilada says, Mama Guthrie will most likely be found tomorrow, end of the snake year. 216 equals 666. Yeah, that's right. Tomorrow's the weekend's birthday. 216 is indeed 6 cubed. It's the number that Pythagoras described as the phoenix cycle, the number of years between incarnations. I don't know how they arrived at that, but that does mean if something bad happens and you don't get out of this place, when you get back, presumably the technology will be a lot better, but it won't resemble what we have today in what, 2042 or something. But you're right about time loop. They are recycling a lot of stuff. I mean, this is bizarre that they could just take QAnon that the left mocked, but repackage it. So now it's no longer blaming Israel. Now it's blaming KGB. And now it targets Trump, not Biden. And now the left is all about it. But no, if you're expecting a dramatic ending or it getting real, it's not going to happen. Just lower your expectations. You know, I read somewhere they're going to release some new episodes of Mystery Science Theater, which I want to watch because we can learn a lot from that program. It's basically what we're in. We are a captive audience to alien overlords who deliberately force us to binge watch bad science fiction to drive us crazy. And if you think about our science fiction fused worldview, it is syncretic, traditional religion plus sci-fi. And if you adhere to it and you're programmed by it, yeah, you're crazy. You've been rendered a mind control subject. Yeah, the masses have fallen for it. And Mystery Science Theater 3000 really to me is about resisting the mind control by essentially becoming a critic of the presentation, throwing popcorn at the screen. Big Enchilada says psyop fatigue. I don't think so, because the public are junkies for psyops. They just don't know it. It's like when you're addicted to the emotional spikes, whether you're gambling or you're in a relationship that's volatile, certain patterns do become effectively addictions. So you think, oh, we're burnt out. That election just took it all out of me. And the next month there's a scandal. And it's one after another. And this is right along with Sun Tzu's The Art of War, about how new tactics, the unorthodox becomes orthodox with repeated use, so you have to switch. Eddie says, I find it really hard to believe these people are eating babies. Well, according to Alex Jones, they eat baby guts. I find that even harder to believe. Like, that's gross. I find it to be not only gross what Alex Jones did, but disturbing, because he went into some sick detail. Jamarin says he figured out what comes in your person between now and summer. Oh, no, I'm not leaving school. I'm just having to pay out of pocket. My plan was to take out loans and use that to set up a new headquarters. But there were some roadblocks, but it's like, well, I don't really want to take out a loan anyway. I started reading the fine print. I had ChatGPT break it down, and it's like, student loans are terrible. Do I want to live underneath that cloud for like 10 years? To hell with that. I'm actually looking into night stalking. There's a number of opportunities around here. And honestly, it's easy stuff. I mean, I can do whatever. My objective here is to prioritize this. So I try not to let my work get in the way too much. But the stuff I'm doing in school relates to this. In fact, one of the last classes I went to was watching Black Mirror Season 6, Episode 1, Joan is Awful, and discussing the implications of it. Now, I don't have anything to say from off-world stage in a public environment like that. I'm not going to say, well, we already live in fictive level 1, because we can't differentiate real from fake because the propaganda is fully integrated with all media. No distinction between news and entertainment. But I think it's important not to rock the boat. I'm not trying to disrupt the indoctrination process. That's not what I'm here to do. You have believers who are followers and seekers who are knowers. In a lot of ways, you could call this media Gnosticism, because we're specifically getting out of the realm of belief and the need of an intermediary, a priest class, to tell us what's going on. Alt media purports to be that, but all of their influencers are just an alternative group of priests. Again, anti-establishment alt media is actually a subset of the establishment, totally controlled. But we do live in a science fiction paradigm. In fact, I've written a bit about it in Secret Religion of the Elite, and I may have to revisit that. I don't know if I want to republish it, but I could make it into a series of discussions and add a bunch of additional new information. Okay, let's continue here. Jamarin says, I was forced to watch the original Blade Runner in college. Also read The Trial by Kafka. I like Metamorphosis, where he turns into a cockroach. But no, I like all of Kafka's work. What's that one? The one about the girl who sings. Is it Sonia? There's so many good stories there. But yeah, we live in a Kafka-esque universe, and it's going to get worse. And by worse, I mean more immersive. You're going to be more and more disconnected from human accountability. But Blade Runner, I don't know why you need to be forced to watch it. It's kind of a classic. Although the last time I watched it, I did find certain elements to be kind of off-putting and unnecessary and dull. Like, I didn't really care to watch, what's his name, Han Solo, like, forcing makeouts on that robot chick. But anyway, it has an interesting concept because it has this kind of neo-inquisition, trying to figure out who's a replicant and who's a real person. They can no longer tell real from fake, so they have this entire department there to test to see if these people are real. In fact, the movie was predictive of 2019 Los Angeles. And the movie also showed essentially the Cybertruck before it was invented. And Musk showcased the Cybertruck in November 2019, right along with the Blade Runner script. I know there's been some new versions of them. Somebody recommended that I see one where, I think it's another Total Recall I need to see as well. I have a lot of catching up to do. Kevin Morgan says, more channels popping up with talk about CK being alive. Yeah, you know what's bizarre about that? Is I started talking about my project and I kind of shut my mouth about it because the title was used by some big alt media channel. I'm like, okay, I got to change my title. But what I'm observing, though, I'm observing the channels talking about it because they're not going to have the entire picture. You can have the right facts, but if you have the wrong perspective, it doesn't matter. Your facts are drowned in the sea of irrelevance. They've got this thing locked down. However, the people who notice and agree, even if they don't have the right conclusions, are going to be reachable. They're advertising. They're raising their hand. Hey, I'm an off-world stager, but I'm surrounded by world stagers, and nobody understands. Like they're being softly outgrouped all the time. They're not platformed in alt media whatsoever. Because we're not just talking about a guy faking his death. We're talking about a manufactured historical event of great significance and how this is routine. And unpacking this one will unveil the entire fake timeline of events that they have superimposed over real news for the last 60, 70 years plus. I mean, I'm only going off of empirical research. I'm not into speculating about the mud flood and other fake history narratives, which I think are all disinformation operations anyway. Like if you're a mud flooder and you're talking about ancient technology, they've managed to distract you with a shiny new object from the fact that yesterday's news is fake history. And we can look at the architecture of how they manufacture our consensus worldview by spiking it with fakery all the time. And the fake stories aren't the majority. We're not saying everything is fake, but fake drives the main narratives, cycle after cycle. Lasers go. Pew Pew says probably both Charlie and Eric are CIA. Yeah, that's a safe assumption. I mean, yeah, they're both in on it. Erica didn't kill Charlie. It's a script. Candace Owens is in on the script. She has no plausible deniability in this. What she's doing is she's a mouthpiece for the controlled opposition designed to alienate the general public from conspiracy theorists and to keep conspiracy theory on the woke right anti-Israel side of the right wing. So the mainstream Republicans who are pro-Israel are all about Antifa did it, Tyler Robinson did it, leftist ideology did it. We got to take America back. But the woke right are like, no, this was done by Israel because he was going to talk about Epstein and expose the deep state. The fact that her talking points perfectly guardrail the situation in a predictable way tells you that she's a plant. She's never going to go away. There's nothing she can say, that nothing she can mispronounce that's going to make her not be the #1 podcast on Earth. And why is that? She's a necessary part of the PSYOP architecture. She's a bridge between red pill and J pill. And she appeals to certain demographics that they want to reach. It's funny how like the conspiracy theory on the right and the fringe right, they're all like, Israel did it, Erica did it. That's the new insinuation. Erica did it. It's probably an accusation by now. And the left is like, good job, Tyler Robinson. I'm surprised that Tyler Robinson doesn't have a pack of groupies. Luigi Mangione has his Mangionettes. The Mangionettes are the women fan base of Luigi. But Tyler Robinson, who obviously had a predilection for furries, should be surrounded by, I would imagine, a pack of them. A wolf pack. Like a bunch of wolves lined up at the prison. Okay, let's see here. Sink Lloyd says 333 barrels of body dissolving acid. Yeah, I saw that. They dissolve the stuff they can't turn into jerky. I think they had a better explanation for that. It had to do with, I don't know, I got to look into it. But they leave you these clues to get you to arrive at conclusions that they made very obvious. They want you to believe this stuff, but we fall short on evidence. And most of what I've seen has been contaminated, altered, fabricated evidence. Okay, continuing. Idego says we're breaking history, Tim. Yeah, well, history is comprised largely of we're talking about stories, right? Agreed upon stories. As Napoleon probably didn't say, it's kind of apocryphal. History is lies agreed upon. Well, we can say the same of media. Lies agreed upon. Jamarin says, I watched this live stream. JL had a long convo with another streamer. They bickered and argued back and forth, blaming Jays, the other blaming Jesuits. Yeah, that's a distinction without a real difference. Because I'd noticed that if you arrive at the conclusion that the Jesuits control everything, the J pill say, well, the Jesuits were actually controlled by Jays. So they just one-up you. But we don't have enough information to arrive at such a conclusion. And all these conspiracies that give you the bad guy that you need to expose, they follow a similar template. And they're useful for organizing large demographics, a common enemy. That's why the far left has this target on this certain concept of whiteness. That is their organizing principle. That's their rallying point. Fight systemic racism. Fight this power structure. Meanwhile, the far woke right is like the same thing, but instead of critical race theory, it's critical Israel theory. But yeah, Jay Al's talking to Hubbard tomorrow. Okay, so Zachary Hubbard is one of these gematria calculator types who believes that people die in psyops. So not only is he not reliable, but he's part of the noise. They add noise to drown out signal. All the events, according to one or another of his multiple gematria calculators, will somehow prove the Jesuits did it. You could make the case for anything using that particular methodology, which is largely based on the Texas sharpshooter fallacy and cherry picking. And what it does is it drowns out what we're doing. Pattern recognition, metascript analysis versus magical numerology calculators, which are actually designed or used by rabbis to read into the Torah and somehow arrive at this only could have been written by God because these connections are mind-blowing. That's what they do with the news media. They manufacture connections that, yeah, these are coincidences, but is it the result of intentionality, engineered timing, or are you just fishing for coincidences and ignoring the misses? And they want that out there so that the casual observer or the normie skeptic will look in this direction and say, oh, you guys are just cherry picking and seeing things that aren't there. That's noise. Where's signal? That's why we've had to diverge into our third branch of media. So we're not alternative media here. This is the alternative to the controlled opposition alternative. We are not a subset of the mainstream. We're not operating within their Truman Show paradigm because we're cognizant of what they have faked in the past, what they're capable of faking, and we're observing the programming, largely within entertainment, that runs alongside the fake events as they manufacture our history. The other day I was listening to a review of a book by the daughter of Edward Bernays about propaganda. You know, the term propaganda is actually out of the Vatican. The Department of Propaganda, they have this agency called propaganda, and the object was to drown out the Protestants. Kind of an interesting notion, though, that the idea here, worldview warfare is what we're talking about. Information war. Sequeloid says 333 script given, right? Yeah, that's the hoax code. 333 gallons, 33,000 emails, 3.3 million pages of documents. It's predictable. But they're exploiting people emotionally because it's like the AIDS ribbon thing. How can you be against saving the children? So they're taking your good intentions because you want to be a child saver. You want to rescue them from the fires of Molech. So they take your good intentions and they hook you onto a fake agenda. So now you've been rendered useless for solving any real world problems if you were so inclined. And you're reinforcing their mythologies that they use to maintain this perfect bifurcation between the visions, the worldviews of the left and the right. They put us on the political horseshoe. And they call it a political horseshoe because at the fringes, they're very close. They resemble each other, but they never touch. Big Enchilada says, DeepSeek gave a good analysis. The goal is not to hide the truth, but to drown it in a sea of plausible fictions. Well, how many iterations of somebody other than Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk has Candace Owens given us? It's all conspiracy candy. But they pretty much have a list of people that they blame for it. And no matter who they blame, when you follow their storylines, it will always ultimately lead to Israel. Same thing they did with JFK. And I predicted these trends would be noticed and there'd be memes for it. So I see memes all the time. It's got JFK and Charlie Kirk at the Twin Towers, and it says, "What do these three have in common?" And it has the Israeli flag. Okay, continuing here. So Alex Jones says they have tips on how to blank babies, eat bodies, grind up bones. So, I mean, that's a big claim. It's highly disturbing. And so I asked Grok, and I said, Grok, are there any files that actually state what Alex Jones alleges here about starving babies and playing audio of the voices of their mothers? If not, what does it say about his imagination? And he says, after reviewing, this is Grok, after reviewing, Grok, is this true? The unsealed Epstein court documents from sources like Court Listener and fact checks from others, I found no references to starving babies, playing recordings of the mother's voices, or these related torture methods. Mentions of cannibal and cannibalism refer to unrelated contexts, not evidence of the acts. Jones's allegations seem to extend beyond the file's content on trafficking and abuse. So I had this person say to me, I read the emails about the mother's voice. It's on the files. Check again. And I asked her, post a link. And she kept telling me to go to the DOJ website. And I was like, you're shifting the burden of proof. And this is just politeness, but it's also the rules of logic. If you're going to bring an extraordinary claim to the table, it's kind of on you to bring a link. Because it seems like a lot of what we're hearing is actually community-generated fan fiction. Earlier, I mentioned Mirage Mid, about how the special forces helped create conspiracies about aliens. They created the UFO mythology. But once they started that, the community picked it up. It became a movement. UFO, self-professed ufologists, UFO witnesses just came out of the woodworks. And all it took was a little bit of prompting. They just planted the seeds. No mention of starving babies or abuse. Says the files do, okay, it says it seems twisted online. So there's an email between UCLA professor and Epstein about a study with mothers' voices and pacifiers. Nothing about starving them. I'm still trying to find anything in here. Nope, says related to the abuse, these claims appear exaggerated. Check primary sources. This person's really digging and trying to get Grok to agree to what Jones said. And Grok says, I get why your context feels suspicious given the Epstein's alleged crimes, but the text is straightforward. It's a funding pitch for premature infant research. So they're talking about how to get preemies to feed. No abuse is stated or implied in the content. Primary docs, not there. That's a long email exchange between Julie P64077773338. You see these names with these random numbers? I think that's their employee number. This person has a badge, and they use that number to get paid. These have got to be trolls, because she spent the better part of the day. I mean, I went off to go enjoy my day after I started this conversation, and she's been here arguing with Grok all day, trying to get Grok to confirm the lies Alex Jones was just spewing, which again, I say are evidence of a very sick, twisted imagination. Okay, I want to continue here. The thing about Marina Abramovich is what I wanted to get to. Because she had said something in this recent interview about how she's no longer safe to walk down the roads. You know, and for a moment, I mean, I'm like, if true, it's kind of sad. She's what, 80 something? She says she's received so many death threats that she's had to hire private security. People have come after her with weapons. She can no longer walk down the streets. She said it's happening because of Alex Jones type conspiracies, and it's not fun at all. Now, is she a witting actress in this entire thing? It's a valid question. She was hanging out with questionable people here and there and engaging in a lot of weird stuff, especially in being involved with a lot of high-level celebrities who are also PSYOP reinforcing propaganda outlets. So it's hard for me to think that this is like a legitimate claim of hers. Could be completely fake. But regardless, just the very idea that an extreme artist who hasn't actually been convicted of anything, who's been caught up in this conspiracy theory web, is unable to walk down the road, I think there might be something wrong with that. But I get these comments like, oh, spirit cooking. Someone has a copy of her book, Abramovich's Spirit Cooking with Essential Aphrodisiac Recipes. She says, I have no idea how these weird conspiracy theories start. It's not like I'm doing, yeah. Anyway, I'm looking at pictures of her and others eating corpses. But anyway, the comments in here were quite nasty. And I actually asked somebody, are you disappointed that you're not allowed to burn people at the stake and throw rocks at them? And the answer is like, yeah. There are so many people out there who would probably be fine with burning witches. Alleged witches. But she fits this archetype. And then you have pictures of her hanging out with some, the Rothschilds have been targets of conspiracy theories in front of that massive painting. Who is it? Is it William Blake? Satan Summoning His Legions? It's like showing the opening scenes of Milton's Lost Paradise. And then you see her hanging out with Jay-Z, which Jay-Z's kind of been implicated in the whole, I think more like the other Pizzagate story around P. Diddy. And he has a lot of Aleister Crowley stuff attached to him we could get into. Is anybody, I don't know, mildly perturbed? I'm seeing memes that literally say this. Time for new witch trials. Try burning at the stake. This is by Wolf Krieger, verified account. Quote, Christian, father, conservative, veteran. Okay, this Christian conservative father is talking about setting a woman on fire. Marisa Hofer says, she's a witch after all. F this B. That's pretty good. Oh, and this might even have a tie-in with the Wicked Witch story, now that I think about it. Because the Wicked Part 1 and 2 have both had specific relations to the Minneapolis event. Renee Good in particular. Wicked for Good has this Antifa subtext that's impossible to miss when you recognize that Trump is the Wizard of Oz. Oz is America. Elphaba is Antifa. She's the embodiment of the left's fight against Trump's attempt to deport the oppressed class. In Oz, it's the talking animals. So that's kind of interesting. She's making her appearance here. I'll have to look deeper into that because there's something to it. Because another element, too, is that Elphaba the Witch is a hero to the left, but would be a villain to Trump's people, to the right. And I'm noticing that all the calls to burn her at the stake are coming from QAnon, MAGA, right-wing Christian conservatives. I don't see any liberals calling for the immolation of this woman. Marina Abramovich. The name even sounds like witch. I think this is probably staged demonic spirit cooker, not aging well. That's what happens when you're consumed by evil. Yeah, for all the advertisement the Q people have given for the rejuvenation that you get from adrenochrome, none of the alleged adrenochrome users aren't aging well. Not that I've seen. Maybe Tom Cruise, but he hasn't been implicated. Maybe Pam Bondi. She looks like she could be. I don't know. I saw her image and I'm like, wait a minute here. How is she 60? But Marina Abramovich also, people pointed out for a long time until just now that she looked like she wasn't actually aging. But that QAnon stuff is back, but they're not calling it QAnon. I mean, that's what's so, this is giving me cognitive dissonance because the left is like, oh, QAnon's crazy. Listen to all the stuff they're saying. This is just made up. This is conspiracy drivel. And now they're falling for it because it's been repackaged. Although they're mostly using it as a political weapon against Trump. It's still the right and the original QAnon people who are going livid over this new stuff and who are buying into the more religiously tinged elements of it, the satanic demon stuff. And the satanic, the demons, the supernaturalism is another thing that has become more pronounced as of recent. In fact, Joe Rogan's becoming more explicitly Christian, and we'll talk about demons. People are talking about demons like it's just it's accepted they exist. Okay, Capture Loop says she knows exactly. She was hired to be part of it all. Yeah, this could be red meat for Q people who used to say, when the truth gets out, none of them will be able to walk the streets. She's in the FO stage of FAFO. Quote, it's not fun at all. Anyone find it ironic that, yeah, this is all the way down. I'm just going through the comments, and it's literal demonization of the enemies. None of you should feel comfortable going anywhere. That's the point. A lot of internet tough guys. Here, actually, I said that a second ago. I actually found a Q person quoting this. The Patriot Girl said, in quotes, this is a QAnon quote. She's following JFK Jr.'s fan club. There will come a time when none of them will be able to walk down the street. So you have people here citing Q references about when the truth gets out. Burn the witches, burn her, says Tess, who also goes, her handle is Truman Burbank. Poor demon needs extra security. For your sins you will find out. She is evil. She should be scared. She looks like an old crone, like out of Grimm's fairy tales. Hey, that's true. Like Hansel and Gretel. She is that. Red State Rebel says she looks like a straight up witch. She should be scared. What she should be scared of is the final judgment. She should not be safe. We need another Luigi, says AU Noah. Let me look at this person. Houston, Texas. Crypto meme coins. World Wrestling Entertainment fan. So this World Wrestling Entertainment fan would like Luigi to take out the witch. Repent and accept Jesus as your Lord, and you will have no fear. Honey, this is what you asked for. You need repenting. Someone else posted an image of a gun blowing up a head. Looks like a plastic replica of a skull, actually. Ah, poor Luciferians. Such an evil woman. I don't want her in my feed. Addis says, this is really great. I hope she lives in constant fear. Now, this is a valid question. Borg here says, why doesn't she just ask the demons she summons for protection? I feel sorry for her. Not, says Wendy Moore. Looks like she's running out of adrenochrome. She's a dude. If you didn't notice it, that's what they do. It says WV trophy wife. They invert God's creation. It's all these religious people. Listen to this. Mother veteran, cop emoji, flag emoji, cross emoji. I hope she stays afraid. Synagogue of Satan worshiper. Bodyguards won't protect you. Judgment day will come. Crass says, looks like her adrenochrome dealer ran out of stock. Again, yeah, we're stuck in a 2020 time loop. Even before that, I feel like we're reliving 2016, 2017 here. It's a man dressed up. She's a witch. She should go to Israel. You can see where this is going. Not fun. It wasn't fun for the babies you slaughter either. Jolo says she should not be safe. She should hang. Okay. I look at Jolo's account and says, drop all anger. Are we supposed to feel bad for her? She looks like a cartoon wicked witch. The hunter becomes the hunted. No sympathy here. She should be worried. She can no longer walk the streets. Yeah, these people are sick. And of course, I responded to them just asking, are you mad that you can't throw rocks? And they legitimately are. Like, I think we need to defang a lot of this type of stuff, but they really aren't going to do anything. Their action is to doom scroll these doom gooners. And they do think that they're fighting the info war. And it makes me think, too, that the purpose of X, the purpose of a lot of these platforms is probably just to give people a vent so they don't actually mess up the stage. Patriot Blonde says, Alex Jones has gone from exposing the deep state to joining forces with them for profit. He has sold his soul. So this constitutional conservative has 132,000 followers. She's probably not even real, because apparently there's like this trick that I saw this advertised on YouTube. You can make avatars of MAGA women, spam a bunch of content, and a lot of these older MAGA gentlemen will send you money. Crypto in particular. I saw one video and got pulled where the guy was showing how he saw someone get $40,000 in crypto from some old MAGA guy who thought he was giving money to a young patriot, but it was all AI. I mean, is that bad? Someone said I should do it. That's how I heard about it. They said, look into this. You could do this. I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is like the equivalent of OnlyFans. I don't want to be entertaining these bored MAGA people. I don't know. But anyway, I said, and the reason I stated it like this is because I was seeing if I get a reaction here. I said, you're an idiot if you didn't think he was already an insider from day one. He betrayed you 9/11, Sandy Hook, January 6th, and he admitted to knowing who Q is, but continues to withhold that information. And predictably, no response. Joe Fior says, what are we talking about? I'm totally lost. Well, I was going through a list of people responding to Marina Abramovich saying that she can no longer walk down the streets, and how the Christian conservatives think it's a good thing and want to burn her at the stake. Capture the Loop says Christian extremism is legitimately scary. Well, what you're actually looking at is MAGA ban. It's engineered, fake, astroturfed. Most of those accounts are probably fake. Jeffrey Epstein started this QAnon thing. This is one of their, it's a psyop. I mean, this is a psyop character like Erica Kirk, where they're responding to these roles that are being played as though they're actually real. They're not. A storyline selling you on a particular version of things. Okay, moving on. Okay, so this individual named Science DJX. No, it's not even him. It's a harvested clip. So it's this live stream I mentioned earlier, where you have this guy in his car making himself cry or trying to cry. And it's from Big Old Texas Family on TikTok. Okay, that's what they're doing. It's not even a link. He's uploading the video. So here's the formula. You go to TikTok, you take somebody's video, post it on X, cash in. There's a lot of people doing this. So this is very much a strategy here. So this big tough guy is fake crying in his car about the Skippy video that's so bad you can't watch it. And all these people are talking about it. Like, it's so bad. And I just see this emotionally unstable engagement baiter. And I called him a crisis actor. And I asked Grok about it. And, people say, don't ask Grok. I'm like, why? Are there inconvenient facts? Do you think it just lies? I'm not saying it's a source. It's a source for sources. And I'm challenging this guy as a source. So this individual in his car is raging and crying about the Skippy video and telling us it's real, be mad. So I asked Grok, and Grok says, it's a clip, an unverified clip, circulating conspiracy circles showing John Podesta supposedly abusing a child tied to Pizzagate theories. It is resurfaced in Epstein docs, but fact checks find no evidence or proof of authenticity. Origins and validity remain uncertain. So I think I know what he's talking about. The problem is, this is a video which has not, this came out when John Podesta had his email hacked. So it's not new. It's not a new release. And I don't think it supports what he's claiming it does. I don't know what it is. Context is everything in these things. But you have people saying, well, I saw the video where Uma Abedin and Hillary Clinton were ripping the faces off of girls and wearing the skins. And it was so bad. I have nightmares and PTSD. Don't go watch them. Oh, just take your word for it. Okay. So I responded to a lot of the people who were mad at me. What the F, bro? Imagine being this out of touch with life. You must be a blank, or just looking for media engagements, which is ironic because this guy is an engagement baiter. I said, I think it's cool how your community is so into its own fan fiction. However, I would caution against taking your delusion too seriously and allowing it to spill over into your real life. We've already observed how QAnon cult beliefs have wrecked people's lives. Try touching grass in between your doom consumption. But anyway, my point of it is the delivery on this particular video is formulaic. These car ragers. And it's actually something that you see that has been observed for a long time on the right. I think Matt Walsh got his start as a car rager. And I get it. I do my live streams in a vehicle often because it's easy to just park somewhere. You control sound. Comfortable. The car in your car has better furniture than your house usually. I mean, car seats are like the front seat of the truck I'm in is more comfortable than anything I have here. And I like the privacy, the sound booth. But what I noticed in these videos is I think these guys are paid. Like, sit in your car, read this script. And this guy cannot have actually seen what he's claiming that he has seen. It's just innuendo, insinuation, not supported by facts. But the way he delivered, I've seen often. And I looked into this. And it turns out that, yeah, if you're method acting, you bug your eyes out and you let the air get them. Hyperventilation is a must. Thinking about sad things. But he's raging in an Alex Jones kind of tirade here. So it also calls an emotional appeal. But all the usual suspects, all the usual Q people are back, but they're not branding it Q, which I find to be very interesting, because it just came out that Jeffrey Epstein is pretty much Q. They tell your local or your whoever's in your feed talking about the Epstein stuff, emoting over it, let them know that this whole QAnon thing is led by Jeffrey Epstein himself. Drinkwater says, I'm not religious, but I know not to judge Jesus' message by his so-called followers. Yeah, I use, not to be disrespectful about it, but I spell Christian with a lowercase c. And the reason why is no one seems to have like the final version. It seems to be very subjective. There's a lot of internal diversity, and I think that's fine. I think that should be celebrated, but it's not. To be a religious person essentially is to be at war with everybody who's not in your hive. I think the system is designed to turn us into drones. And by drones, I don't mean we all look alike, act the same, but we all operate from the same perspective, the persona, the societal approved mask that they help to engineer. So we're all in lockstep, going with the program, staying within the boundaries established by their Overton window, the movie screen, your television. And they want us to be lockstep in this massive hive. And if you leave the hive, they have a smaller hive you can join, or an alternative hive, not necessarily smaller. But as long as you're in their big box, it doesn't matter. I mean, we are essentially living in a religious paradigm. It just doesn't go by that designation. But what we get through our world view programming through mass media is essentially tantamount to a religion. And it borrows a lot from religions, which we often point out. But what I think is interesting about this, though, is that you can have so many versions of Christianity that are so different from one another that some of them hate each other. But at the same time, they have a central point of agreement. And that central premise is the unifier. And I think that's essentially a consolidation of power under the appearance of diversity. Media does the same thing. You think, oh, the left and the right couldn't be more different. No, they instituted the political horseshoe theory as a model. They're actually marching along the same lines. They just have different. Okay, we are here for part 2. This is part 2 of the IPS deprogram for February 15th, 2026. First time ever. Restream sent me this message. They said, your stream has been shut down. Contact support. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be a separate video. Hopefully not. Is this a contiguous stream? Yes, it is. Okay, so we're 99 minutes in. Is Epstein Q? Fan fiction, Alex Jones's bizarre rants, and mass psychosis. So we started talking about the Abrahamic cults and the centralization of worldviews. I would look at Serapis for a good example of creating conglomerates over regional gods and uniting large groups of people. And that's what we are in right now. We have a monolithic worldview on the major important points of agreement. It is, in fact, monolithic. This is the new monotheism. We're all observing the world through Big Brother's viewfinder. But I would say that these aren't just made up. These are worldviews that are rooted in something. And I happen to think this something is explained by looking at the more esoteric versions of these things. Like I would say, if anything, the truth in it is the pagan astrotheological aspects. But as far as any of its claims, no, I think religion essentially serves as controlled opposition to actual spirituality that pulls you out of the hive mind. And that religion is also an installer of an operating system and a worldview and a power structure. The division between the sheeple and the interpretive entity, the priesthood, that can tell you what to think. And that's the media now. So we could talk about the traditional religions because they're not going away. But the new religion is a conglomerate of worldviews, of belief systems that actually incorporates all, or it's compatible with all the religions. You've seen that bumper sticker, coexist, where every word, every letter in the word coexist is an emblem from a different religion. Well, that's what this one world religion is. It's a conglomerate of all of them who exist within a paradigm that is a syncretic blend of traditional worldviews and science fiction. Shamaran May says, have you seen these amateur food reviewers who slobber down fast food in their cars? They have massive followers and act like they're holier than thou when it comes to food. Only fans for food. I'm not really a foodie. I wouldn't watch that. But thanks for letting me know. I'll make sure I avoid it. But it's probably going to show up in my algorithm now since I talked about it. But sure, I'm sure there's money in it. If you want to look for opportunities, I would just consult the 7 deadly sins and somehow make content around that particular one. You got fight videos for wrath. You've got gluttony videos, these food reviewers. You got the lust videos, OnlyFans. Envy, obviously, it's huge. I don't know if narcissism is one, but that's big. Looks maxing and stuff. That's vanity. And then you have, I'm trying to think, what are the other 2 of the so-called the sloth? Have they made sloth into a form of content? Have they monetized sloth? And then greed. Yeah, obviously greed. But yeah, those are probably the biggest earning categories. I've been following a little bit involuntarily the development of this new influencer, Clavicles. And this guy is not going to go away. You can tell he's been platformed. If you look at how he emerged, he came into the griper far right wing part of the internet, targeting the youth demographic that Nick Fuentes was also targeting. Nick Fuentes and him got together and he mogged Fuentes. And they've introduced their lexicon. It's gone mainstream. It's really dumb. But there's nothing organic about this person. He's a manufactured, I would say, poster child for this particular ideal, which is kind of a combination of old MGTOW, men going their own way, but also mixed in with this kind of, I don't know, it almost reminds me of OnlyFans for men. Like, it's like the guys are basically all about their image and their persona and this endlessly being competitive about one another. But it's like it fills in that same area. And they make money off of it just by live streaming and being themselves. Well, I see him hanging out with Andrew Tate. And people were mocking him because he could only bench press 135 pounds for 1 or 2 reps because he's on meth and performance enhancing drugs, and people would think he would be stronger. But anyway, he moves in that entire circle. They promoted Ye's song, Hail Hitler, that whole thing. Dark Ghost Wind says he has ties to Peter Thiel, much like Sam Hyde. Oh yeah, Sam Hyde, I am Charlie Kirk. You're Charlie Kirk. and your mom and your sister are the girl that got killed in the subway. Sam Hyde is a crisis actor. But this person is a plant. And so I'm observing it just to see, well, what exactly is the point of this particular plant? And now he's getting mainstream coverage. I think New York Times, The Atlantic, they're doing stories on this. But what's the agenda behind it? It seems to be like the counterpart to toxic femininity. Like you got feminism on the left, misandry on the left, and then you have toxic masculinity and misogyny on the right. And that's where this fits in. So he's an influencer, not a random individual who blew up. No, he's planted to convey certain messages, sort of like Andrew Tate. But Andrew Tate, who had an embarrassing loss in that match, is, I don't know, I guess it's an age thing. It's a demographic thing. So they call him Unk, like Alex Jones. It's an age thing. So they bring in fresh, younger faces, even Nick Fuentes. I think that he's older than a lot of the young conservatives he's targeting. And they were targeting, high school age individuals to convert them into groyperism through 4chan, through memes. So this is a long-term thing. He's 100% a plant. They're going to grow up with him. And I saw stories that he got arrested for his Adderall pill. Some other influencers said they saw him snorting drugs on a plane. I find him to be rather boring and abnormal. I mean, I don't think there's anything extraordinary or particularly offensive about him. He just seems kind of vacant, like devoid of personality. But that's not his job. His job is just to stand there and go with the flow as an influencer. And the more attention he gets, the more magnetic he is to the people who buy into this stuff. So there's legions of fans. But the lexicon he's introduced is annoying. And it's all based on this Zoolander kind of character who thinks that the object of life, it's a black pill thing. They even call it black pill. Like black pill, it means that nothing's fair, everything's bad, all the conspiracies are real, and basically the only way to get anywhere in life is to be super attractive. And that should be your only focus. So it's kind of unusual because when you think of groypers, you don't really think about that. Like you don't associate groypers with attractiveness. You think of basement dwellers, pizza pockets. But this is not even health. Like, oh, this is how you live a healthy lifestyle. Start a trad. Like, these guys who want trad wives aren't living like trads. And it's not even health oriented. It's very nihilistic. In fact, he even said he's unconcerned with lifespan, which is why he's fine using methamphetamines to look slim. 777 says, VTubers have been popping in my feed. Maybe it's because I'm an anime enjoyer. I don't know what a VTuber is. Dark Ghost Wind says groypers are very... Well, okay, so groypers, you're talking about Nick Fuentes' America First group. And he's representative of them, I think. He was with Clavicular at a nightclub, and Clavicular brought him some women, and Nick Fuentes said no. And he espouses values that are very MAGA banned. He's very pro, I would say, Islam, in the sense that I think he would like burqas for American women. And this is not just Nick Fuentes. And Fuentes has crossed the line. He's a public figure. You can criticize him for this. I'm not targeting him. I have no attachment, but he's advocated for lowering the age of consent so that girls could be married off at 14 and they could have babies so they don't get distracted by college and careers, and they could have more bodies for their ethnically pure national state of whatever it's going to be. This America First idea is basically ethno-fascism. But I think you might, when you're describing these individuals, like, look, I think the incel thing doesn't mean they're not into women or they don't actually want the trad family thing. It's to make them feel disenfranchised, that they aren't entitled to a relationship. They're not entitled to this idealized version. And they're always fed this MAGA idea that life was better before civil rights and feminism. And the only reason you don't have a house and 2-car garages and white picket fences and annual trips to, like, you have this idea, this idealized way of life you should have, but you're a single basement dweller groyper. Why is that? Oh, because of Israel's influence, because of feminism, which was caused by Israel. So they've been fed a steady diet of resentment for the fact that they don't have this trad wife as a fixture in their life. And it does come down to entitlement. So when you listen to Fuentes advocating for lower ages, well, what is he really saying? He's actually talking about a power dynamic that, he's been very open about this, but essentially, I don't think they can control women their age. They want the control, and they want the view of things that is, honestly, it's sort of this utopianism, this idealized past. And the right and the left have this vision. The right is the traditional vision, utopian past. Let's go back before, Satan took over everything. And then the far left is like progressivism, transhumanism. And this is tug of war, progressive or traditional. And this explains a lot about why progressives are cool with aliens, extraterrestrial and terrestrial, and the right thinks aliens are demons, whether they're extraterrestrial or earthly. One other point is these are all Poes. Nick Fuentes is not some random individual who is disconnected from the PSYOP entertainment complex. He was Charlie Kirk's competitor. Charlie Kirk reached the youth in the mainstream right, the ones who love Israel and hate Islam. Nick Fuentes is for the fringe right or the woke right, the ones who are anti-Israel. So he was way against Charlie Kirk. So it's a faction thing. And the fact that he has that key position tells you that he's a Poe. He's a parody of extremism. He probably doesn't actually believe what he's saying, but he's a polemicist and he's getting paid good money to argue these talking points. But he's a conscious participant in mass manipulation. He was also an instigator at January 6th who said, disregard the police, take down the barriers, take the Capitol, and didn't go to jail. None of them did, but the whole thing was a massive hoax. Dark Ghost Wind says they have a belief in genetic determinism because it allows them to not try anything because they're lazy. That's why they're virulently racist and everyone else is subhuman. Yeah, I would describe it as a strain of genetic determinism, as an excuse to basically not necessarily be lazy, but to justify not having what they're entitled to justify their entitlement and their scapegoating of those who are responsible. Dark Ghost Wind says Nick Fuentes and Hassan Piker are two sides of the same coin. Exactly. But when you can kind of see where they are world stage wise, what subset they're in, it all makes sense because they are lockstep, uniform of opinion and thought. They're not free thinkers. These are gatekeepers. Like Laura Loomer used to have the reputation of being the conspiracy person, like a 9/11 truther. She was kind of adjacent to that, but not anymore. Ever since she was blasted for this after she went to the White House, she's kind of cleaned that up. And she's kind of established herself as, definitively anti-Islam, mainstream Republican. Tyler Robinson did it. She's on Team Erica Kirk. as contrasted by the new conspiracist on the right, Candace Owens, who's anti-Erica and pro-Islam, anti-Israel. "777 says, Asmund Goldguy, E-Dubs, Hassan, these others are constantly in petty drama, very obvious world stage performers." Yeah, you're looking at reality TV disingenuously presented as real live streaming. I saw a scene where, and I'm saying the term scene advisedly, where Clavicles and crew are being attacked, fights. These things are all staged and fake. It's an soap opera. And the manufactured outrage is good marketing. What blew up Clavicles almost more than anything has been hammer smashing or face smashing, bone smashing. Oh, my parents had to take away the hammers because I was always smashing myself in the face, because the microfractures will cause the bones to grow and make you more attractive. So he claims that tapping his face with a hammer over the years has given him these cheekbones and this jaw structure he wouldn't otherwise have had, which is a hard claim to substantiate considering, I think, age. I don't think it works. I don't know. I wouldn't try it for a lot of reasons. I mean, for a lot, but it's such an extreme claim, and that's not the worst of it. And he casually, just flippantly says that he's using meth to stay lean, and that reminds me of kind of like Logan Paul. When Logan Paul became popular, it was probably, I think at that time, he was one of the top streamers online, but he had 20 million subscribers, mostly in the youth demographics. So he's specifically reaching the youth. And then he starts doing extreme things, like going to the forest where all those dead people were hanging, or electrocuting a dead squirrel with a taser. So he started doing all these horrible things, and then they drew attention to him, and they said, okay, we have to put some brakes on content creators because they're promulgating ideas that aren't being vetted by the parents, and they're radicalizing the youth. So he was like a danger to the youth. And then he hosts a flat earth conference, pretending to be a flat earther, simultaneously trolling them, and also making the case once and for all that there needs to be regulations and filters over search results to protect the youth. So he's a walking, talking psyop, part of the management of the hive. So I can see why you would have someone like Clavicles come out and do extreme bad things, because that makes it, obviously people who are looking for content will like that stuff, but similarly it is going to be looked at as a troublesome influence as we move into the future. Why doesn't he just take Ozempic? 7 says, it's amazing marketing. Whoever writes these storylines is good at their job. Right. Well, these are all PR stunts. They're going out, getting in fights, chanting Hail Hitler. Andrew Tate flies into town and pitches the idea that they start a t-shirt company together, which is being looked at as kind of pathetic, like he's trying to remain relevant. It's so contradictory at times. I think it's maybe intentional to induce cognitive dissonance. Like you have the Q people, got to save the children, stop human trafficking. And then Andrew Tate, human trafficker, comes out and they worship him. You know, there's this cliche among truthers. They say they have to tell us, because oftentimes there are tells, there are giveaways when you're looking at something fake, something manufactured. And I've heard that, and it always annoyed me. But it's hard to deny that there are some intentional reveals. And it occurred to me today that there might be a function to it. If you reveal the truth in a subtle way and people can perceive it, Well, then what happens? They experience cognitive dissonance. What I'm told differs from what I perceive. And peer pressure, media influence, demonizing that perspective makes you choose. Are you going to go with your perceptions or with what you're told? It hurts more to go with your perceptions. You become a pariah, an outsider, a tinfoil hatter. You'll be maligned, and you'll be in league with a lot of unsavory characters. One minute it's chemtrails, the next minute QAnon. Now you're anti-Israel. So they manufacture this where they give you this unattractive set of options. Go with the flow or be condemned, be demonized. And then you're in league and associated with people that maybe don't represent you. And that's, of course, that's just how this program actually works. Going through your comments here. Dramas are a way of cross promotion. Yeah, precisely. I look at this as a soap opera. I mean, the bread and circuses has a wide array of ways in which they can entertain us. And there's always this ongoing drama online. And these characters are propaganda conduits. But by showing you and by making you make a decision between who you're going to trust, yourself or the screen, it's called gaslighting. Because the more they put you through this process of seeing the truth, and then it gets ignored. Seeing the truth, talking about the truth, you get ignored, you get censored, you get derided. Eventually they win. It's a war of attrition. Once you realize, oh, we can't really do anything, the system's unbeatable, you're nullified. And I think that's the objective. It's demoralization. And also, it's to condition you not to perceive for yourself as a primary source, but to always outsource to the screen. And I think it's largely effective. I think it works. And the cognitive dissonance thing, it refers to the pain you feel, which you mean when we say pain, we're talking about the discomfort that you get from having this major contradiction when you're being lied to. But the part of the brain that processes the shock, the cognitive dissonance, is the same part that processes physical pain. So it's emotional pain compliance. It is, in fact, coercive control. And they wouldn't have that hold on you if they didn't show you the truth so you could see it, and they could basically grin in your face through their proxies, through their crisis actors, and let you know, oh, we know that you know, and we don't care. And I see this as an attitude now with all these people who've spent the last since the Super Bowl, really, immersed in the Epstein thing. They're all reaching the point where no one's going to save us. It's futile. So it's nihilism. It's nullifying any kind of attempts to organize because they realize that nobody's on their side. It doesn't matter if it's real or fake. They have the people where they want them, exhausted, convinced that they're under the control of witches and baby eaters. 7 says, there's another theory, they put this in your face to give you fatigue. Well, that's what I mean. So gaslighting does contain the element of fatigue because it's a repeated thing over time. It's not just once. The systemic lying will wear you down. It will eventually, that's the idea. It erodes your confidence in your own perceptions. Because if your perceptions are constantly contradicted, it does erode your ability to trust yourself first. It kills off your intuition. You might see something that's obviously fake, but maybe you're not behind the scenes. You don't know how chroma key works. Maybe you can't perfectly explain because you don't know about method acting, why they're presenting their grief in a certain way. Maybe you can't exactly explain or articulate how you know it's fake, but the gestalt, according to your perceptions, gives off fake vibes. Well, you no longer trust that because you call it fake and everybody attacks you. I mean, I was called a baby eater today because I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein is anything more than a construct, an actor in a long psyop soap opera. I will not go so far as to say he doesn't exist and he's just a CGI character. That is blackwashing. I thought I was going to get to my notes tonight, but I'd rather actually work on the video. But I did have, here it is, for the Conspiracy Vetter channel, and you'll get notifications. But everything is fake claims. These claims blackwash actual media deconstruction, which separate real from fake. They represent a loss of discernment, a reflexive, low info, automatic disbelief. Now, one of the problems with this, with truthers in general, is they automatically reject the claims of the other side without coming to a substantive critique. But they automatically believe the crap on their own side. Autism says, believe the news or you're a pedovore. What a day to wake up in. Yeah, exactly. They're exactly like that. Oh, you must be a Satanist. You must be in the cabal. I mean, I was experiencing this early on. I've experienced the hive. I've been attacked by hives. I kick the beehives all the time. I was doing that today. I can see these things for what they are, and the responses are predictable. When this channel first came out, we weren't shut down by Big Brother or YouTube censorship, because that was before YouTube was aggressively censoring. We were shut down by specifically Bible thumpers, Christian truthers who were super mad that I wasn't ranting and raving about Israel. And back then they got into all kinds of weird stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm a reptilian and I'm a female that works for the Mossad. And I'm like, wait, I thought one of your commandments was not to lie or bear false witness. There's two. On those two counts, you are contradicting your religious beliefs. But I'm immune to these manipulative tactics. I'm actually amused by them because it shows you that these people are responding like robots. They're going with the program. They have no independent thinking. They're emotionally volatile, which means that they lack the impartiality to be treated as actual sources. Reality Witness says Squib Test Fund. Appreciate that. So I'm going to do a Squib test as part of my Charlie is Alive thing, which I'm not going to talk a lot about or give any previews of, because there are content harvesters who are trying to offer a world stage compatible version of this, and they're contaminating the pool. It's okay, because all the people responding are going to be reachable by our bots. But one of the plans is to do a squib, and I get my YouTube monetization payments on the 22nd usually. So before the end of the month, we will do a squib, and I'll have an associated video that goes along with a breakdown of the Charlie and Erica Kirk saga and how you can tell it's all fake. But I'm going to be offering this perspective from the off-world stage point of view that the mainstream popular truther channels can't even touch. They're not allowed to be even like 1 degree separated from us. I'm telling you, we're outside of their closed informational system, and we're not to be acknowledged. We're not censored. We're not to be acknowledged. So I am not surprised that this perspective is ignored by the big channels. Okay, we talked about Ghislaine Maxwell. Did they switch her out? Again, I have to look at different explanations first, because if they were going to fake her, they would have faked her better. We talk about witch burnings. Alex Jones's bizarre rant, which I didn't play, but I'll get back to playing audio clips and bits from video when I have everything established and we're in a studio again. The computer I have right now, the connection I have just can't handle that. "777 says, when apathy reaches its peak, or when fatigue reaches the peak, apathy begins." Right. That's Yuri Bezmenov wrote about this. And so what we're dealing with here with the Epstein thing, it's okay. One thing you can say about it, it's overwhelming. They're putting this Ian Carroll, who was on with Tucker Carlson, that should tell you how trustworthy any of these sources are. He put it into some kind of AI program where you can do your own research. So you have the internet crowdsourced research pool, just like Anonymous. What do you think Anonymous was doing? Anonymous has always been using what they even called a hive mind to counter the media. So it's this like people's media thing. Like the mainstream's not going to tell us what we can find out. So they want you involved in what is in fact an alternate reality game. You're trying to solve a mystery, but it's so overwhelming. Millions of emails, not to mention the fake stuff that's just getting the attention. And there's a huge interest in it right now that is exploitable, and people are incentivized to be involved if they're making money for clicks. And an active measure refers to a covert, offensive political influence operation, disinformation, propaganda, originating in the Soviet era. These tactics were used to weaken adversaries, influence public opinion, and disrupt. Techniques include social media for amplification, leaking hacked materials. That's a big part of it. Leaking hacked materials completely gets you involved. It's a waste of time. But anyway, it's a form of political warfare, just information warfare, these data dumps with false leads. Overwhelming. I mean, this is crazy. These overwhelming bodies of information, just millions and millions of emails and documents and all these people involved. This is going to have them busy for decades by design. So if you look at the history of the conspiracy counterculture, it's always been government created. It starts with JFK. It's always been this way. And they're just rebooting it. They're maintaining it. And so they go through iterations. So blood libel kind of came out of fashion. No one's talking about that anymore. They redressed it as QAnon, same stories, but a little more marketable to a wider audience. Doesn't immediately go for the ethnic stereotypes and stuff and the claims of eating babies. That comes later. It's kind of, I mean, it's there, but it's kind of occulted, and it's dressed up with a little more horror themes, a little sci-fi. But QAnon was not new. It was just repackaged. And this is a new iteration of that, but stripped of MAGA. Now, one other point here. Another reason why they have created this mythology with Epstein, because it makes sense when you get the purpose. If you're going to have an entire worldview framing that side of the political spectrum, we're talking about like wokeism, critical race theory versus critical Israel theory. You need to have this organizing story, this narrative, this mythos. But I think what we're looking at here, and I'm suggesting that it's entirely just a myth made up, that this is like a long-term plan. That's why you have years and years of emails. But they need this to exist to justify their worldview. It's kind of fundamental. Like you have evidence of systemic racism that the left can point to, Now you have evidence of systemic control by Israel that the right can point to, the far right can point to. And wokeism means you've become awakened to your oppressor. So the left is oppressed by whiteness, by systemic racism, by the patriarchy, and the woke right claims the opposite, but they have a different scapegoat. They're oppressed by Israel and its influence, which created feminism, so they're oppressed by women. If you go down the line, these are oppression narratives, and that's what wokeism means. You can see the covert controls. You've been awakened, and now you bear the burden of knowing the truth, seeing the truth, but everyone else is still stuck in the matrix. So now you have to essentially find a new tribe, and that's what they do. You're already introduced now to these ideas with all these other people, and it's kind of a bonding thing. Now you're truthers. But again, my point here is that trutherism, truthers, conspiracy theorists, this has always been a government manufactured counterculture to control dissent, a steam valve for dissent, limited hangout operations to find out what sensitive data leak to the masses so they can control it and poison it. And right now, and I'll get to this, this is going to be a topic in the near future with this conspiracy vetter, we can observe the real-time operations to muddy the waters around things they don't want us getting coherent understandings of. So this media deconstruction, the manufacturing of history, the true nature of psyops and how they're bloodless, they don't want that getting out to the mainstream truthers. So what do? They poison the well with gematria calculators, simulation theory, claims that the glitches that we're seeing or the evidence of fakery points to aliens, satanic artificial intelligence, anything but the mundane truth that we have a soft totalitarianism because we have global governance, big G government, lots of small g little governments, and that we have no political power because politics is a subset of mind control and it's all rigged. But voting keeps you from rebelling, from shooting. It's the illusion of control. Okay, let's see here. Diana Southard says the Keto Chow YouTube commercial has the witch, Hansel and Gretel burn the witch, shouted by dirty peasants. Yeah, see, this is syncing up for me. There's a reason why Abramovich is out there and why this, because this is, again, the witch. This is not a new thing. The Jezebel witch, the witches that cursed Charlie Kirk. The movie Weapons, which is the basis for the Annunciation school shooting by the Nazi witch, starred a witch. The Red Witch, the witch is all about the witch, which makes a lot of sense when you look at archetypes and the right wing and their position towards feminism and how they brought out this spate of leftist shooters who've all been embroiled in witchcraft Satanism. And then you have the hero of one of the biggest movies of recent time, Wicked and Wicked for Good, being a witch, who is, in the subtext, representative of Antifa, the heroes in the struggle against the Wizard of Oz, aka Trump and ICE, Trump's armies kicking the animals out. So the burning of the witch makes perfect sense. It means I'm pretty sure there's a parallel here, but I'm not saying they're really going to burn her. But yeah, hey, that's a good call there. 777 says Abramovich, like Abra and abracadabra. Well, at the very beginning, I talked about the significance of the Rebus, the hermaphrodite thing on the chest of Bad Bunny, and how there was how it represents the sacred wedding, the great rite, the sun and the moon. Meanwhile, there's a wedding on the football field. And then he has a duet with Lady Gaga, who just sang at the Grammy Awards. She sang Abracadabra in red. And the song's about a lady in red, something about reading a poem in the first line. And the way they angle the camera, the performance, she's looking down. So she talks about a lady in red and something about the last words. And it sounds very much consistent with the Scarlet Woman thing. And symbolically, the sacrifice, the sacraments in this religious ceremony are being invoked here. So the fact that she's the one, and she's even wearing this red flower that's called a maga, which means witch. It's the flower of Puerto Rico. It literally means witch. But the fact that she's there with Bad Bunny is that reiteration of this alchemical wedding that's on his tattoo. And of course, abracadabra is the word of the new aeon, according to Aleister Crowley, who even wrote the Gnostic Catholic Mass, where you get the symbolism of the red and the white, Babylon and Christ, or Babylon and the beast. He's the one who updated these archetypes, these gods, and is the source for this. But abracadabra is the name or the word of the new aeon, and they put it at the beginning of his channeled book that is their Bible, the Book of the Law. I saw a music video by the band Behemoth where they were chanting abracadabra. It's a new song, and it has the Tower of Babel falling. Does anybody want to know the name of that song? I don't have it off the top of my head. I got to find it again. Maybe I bookmarked it. I'll share it though. But it was a great depiction of the Tower of Babel falling. And what we see here is syncretism, this conglomeration of worldviews, where religious iconography is freely stolen, appropriated, and merged into the metascript. So I'm not saying that biblical prophecies are true. I'm saying that the content is part of the script. History is made up of stories. They're manufacturing our history, and they're using stories that appeal or relate to the demographics that they are influencing, that they are telling the stories to. Telling the stories, manufacturing our reality. Interestingly, abracadabra literally means I create as I speak. It's about spellcraft, speaking into existence, lying, for example. Because, reality exists. Nobody's questioning that. Simulation theory is fake. But it also exists through us and our shared agreements. There's this level of subjectivity that we agree upon because we can't all see everything at once. So we have this bigger worldview that's a result of our collective agreements. That's where they lie. You can have internal diversity and still coexist. You can be literally schizophrenic, insane, completely out of sync with everybody, and you can still coexist because the real world is our common denominator. However, no matter how different our worldviews are, we all exist underneath the big conglomerate, the universal religion, the new monotheism, which is the worldview we get through the church of mass media writ large. Autism says it's like they're making the whole world go through their lodge rituals that are based on the Bible. Yeah, it could very well be, because what rituals are, ceremonies are theatrical performances that are communicating to the candidates, the initiates, the aspirants. They're being initiated through the symbolic languages. And the theory here is that your subconscious, your higher consciousness, the entirety of your sentience isn't fully represented by what your five senses perceive. And your subconscious does passively absorb, but the idea here is that symbolism is a way to directly go there into your subconscious. And that these rituals are designed to affect change in how you organize your perceptions. Are you organized around the ego? Are you organized around your intuition, etc.? And their magical systems are supposedly designed to integrate consciousness, what they call the great work, the true will. But it does seem like the public is being initiated in mass, and that's what they claim to be doing. The entire New Age movement is based on the small group of initiates from underground externalizing it. That's what Aleister Crowley did. Take stuff out of the secret chambers, release it to the masses, and let this new aeon emerge. But I don't think that's what they're actually doing, because every indication here is that the same system is in power. It's just updating in its superficial aspects. And if anything, we're not going into an age of enlightenment. It's an age of endarkenment. So there does seem to be, like I said, it's a new monotheism. It's a worldview monopoly. And there still is a monopoly over the light. Autism says exactly, worldwide initiations of various degrees, depending on what they believe. Well, okay, that's another part of it too. And Albert Pike alluded to this, the guy who wrote the degrees 4 to 33 or 32. I think 33 is just honorary. Well, one of the things he suggested was that the lower levels are purposefully misled. So they're initiated, they're raised into the system, but they're not told the true meaning, the esoteric meaning of the symbols. So we are brought into a consensus worldview, but we're hoodwinked. We have the wool over our eyes. If you haven't been brought into the secret chambers where they take the sack off of your head, the wool sack, and you see the candlelight, now you're in the temple, and they tell you everybody else is in the darkness. If you haven't been initiated, you're still considered in the dark. The masses are in the dark, and the wool over the eyes is your black mirror, and it's opaque. If you still live with that black mirror as your interpretive framework for reality, to whatever degree that you're plugged into this thing, as far as your belief systems, you are hoodwinked. You're considered to be wandering in the darkness, and that's why I make the case that we live in an age of endarkenment. Autism says, I want to know the esoteric meaning behind ET. Yeah, Epstein. I have such bad Epstein fatigue right now, but I decided we have to confront this head on and determine, what are we looking at here? Alt reality game, manufactured mythos, paradigm architecture for the far right. I think that's what we're looking at. The quote about Albert Pike and Lucifer is actually a hoax attributed to Leo Taxo. The Masonic body of beliefs, because it's not just the Blue Lodge, but the rest of it, it's very eclectic. And, you know, when you get into like the more Gnostic frameworks of things, when you talk about Jesus, for example, the esoteric side of it is more connected with the personification of the literal sun. Like, and it's also weirdly synonymous with Lucifer, because it means light bringer and the sun. So like, we're in the dark, and when they show you the light, now you're enlightened. Well, who bears the light? Or where does it come from? Well, it rises in the east. And so you have these associations, I've noticed, where it's all built on the sun as an allegory for rising consciousness. But the morning star, Jesus, Lucifer, these are all allegories. These are all ways of explaining supposedly what they believe, enlightenment, which is very much like analytical psychologist Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, that our consciousness is actually split, and you have to merge with the dark side, the subconscious side, and through this, what they call the darkening, the alchemical process, you emerge with the two sides. And that's why I think they show you this, the Baphomet, the hermaphrodite, the rebus, the sun and the moon, and the eclipse stuff. But out of the merging of the two, you have the third consciousness. It's Isis and Osiris and their child Horus. Horus represents the new consciousness, the new sun rising, when Osiris is killed by Set. So the story, though, is built into this thelemic worldview. This whole idea here is that we're entering the age of Horus. That's why they're killing. That's why, if you notice, a lot of the anti-Christian stuff in their symbolism, it all represents the destruction of the aeon of Osiris, the sun god, the old sun god, and the introduction of the new sun, who is an androgen. And this is all, I think, explained if you look at how how the pageantry is revealing itself. I think they are revealing the new paradigm, the new God, as we witness the destruction of the old. And all this stuff is actually written about in the book of the law. Quays 404 says, Mind Unveiled has been showing some crazy secret society details found in the JE emails. Yeah, I'll take a look into it. Autism asks, I'm curious why satanic panic is essential to the story that we watch unfold. Yeah, I can briefly address that. The left believes in the pandemic and the virus and the media and the salvation through the vax. The anti-media refuse salvation, they're unsaved. So you've got the vaxxed and the unvaxxed, the saved and the unsaved. So you have this central split. The right was rejecting it because they didn't believe in the pandemic as much as the left did. But the right is motivated by moral panic, while the virus is a new iteration of sin. Left doesn't believe in sin, it believes in virus. The right rejects the virus stuff, but believes in sin. So you'll notice here, you have the traditional concept of sin that makes it easy for the priesthood to regulate down to the individual behavior and everything. And the left rejects sin, but they believe the virus. So you have these alternative interpretations for what is the same element that they introduce onto the world stage. So again, I call it the satanic panics, like Pizzagate. I call these moral panicdemics. And panics are what we're examining here. 2020 was a panic. And what do? You quarantine from the other side. And you see this idea on the right, it's always stay, like get out of the public schools, quarantine from those ideas. They've created a system of mutual antagonisms. It's all very coded, but it's split along the progressive versus traditional. The religious, traditional way of looking at things versus the progressive, and each is the enemy to the other. One of them is progressing away from traditional values into evil. The other is regressive, and we're moving away from regressive evil. But my contention here is that the satanic panic is a necessary aspect of the right wing. Just as the pandemic is intrinsic to the left wing. Their worship of science versus worship of religion. Worship of scientists versus this belief in the traditional structures. But yeah, sin and virus, same thing. This even pertains to the neo-flood myth of climate change and CO2 as a new original sin, Gaia as God. These are analogous structures. And if you look at NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, their symbol of the dove, Noah's Ark, Noah warnings of the floods, it's a reiteration of the same thing. The people who will laugh at Noah's Ark believe in climate change, and those who believe in climate change those who believe in Noah's Ark don't believe in climate change. The wickedness that caused the flood is how the left behaves according to the right. The flood that Gaia is bringing is being caused by the wickedness of the right, as in capitalism, their exploitation of the environment. All right, well, my phone battery is about to die and I'm out of chargers. I'm going to attempt to resume the routine here. I had to make some adjustments, but I'm not really changing very much, but I am adding something. A new channel called Conspiracy Vetter. Short form, like, I don't know how long. I'm going to try to keep these videos at 20 minutes, but there'll be a lot of them. They'll be very specific with the intent of engaging with people who promulgate noise, red herrings, debunked conspiracy, claptrap, trutherville orthodoxies, and such. So thanks again for the support and all the comments. We will continue this conversation in Discord and elsewhere. And I'll be getting to work on the Conspiracy Vetter channel. And you will be the first to know. I'll send out notifications when those videos go up. These videos should be more evergreen than this topical coverage. And I think they'll have a wider appeal because now we're at the point where we're actually going to collide. Worldview collision coming up. The off-world stagers are invading the world stage. And this is where we're not trying to change minds, but we're exposing the architecture of alt media beliefs. So those who are deprogrammed will naturally defect and join the off-world stage perspective.